All right, Gwen, thank you so much for being on the Mindful Impact podcast today.
Thank you
I,
for
yeah,
having me.
yes. First, where are you coming from? Where are you located?
I live in Los Angeles, so I live just outside of Venice and Santa Monica.
Beautiful. Now,
Yes.
in Los Angeles today in your life, when you wake up in the morning, I know you have kids, I know you have a business and everything, a lot in your life. What do you like? What is it right now that you wake up and just for the day ahead of you just makes your heart just sing out loud?
Um, well, I would say the first thing I know that I need to do for myself and for my spirit, my heart, is to do breath work and to do meditation. So right now I'm just doing either, 7, 14, 21 minutes of active breath work and then usually a short bit of meditation afterwards. And then I'll usually do like a full meditation after I'm done with the breath work. So about, 15 to 20 minutes. I always journal. So I always write out, what I either dreamed about or what came through when I just woke up, if there was anything that was on my mind. I also love doing 3 gratitudes, 3 self appreciations, 3 self forgivenesses, and then 3 intentions for the day. It's a really great way to just kind of clean out the debris, before I step into my day. And then I also have been really enjoying yoga nidra meditations lately. So sometimes I'll do, the breath work and then I'll do a yoga nidra, or sometimes I'll do breath work and then I love also the Deepak Chopra and Oprah 21 day meditations. I just love his voice. I love the message. I like that it's 21 days so I can really feel a shift, over 21 days and a focus that I'm working on in my life. So those are some of the things that I do.
Well, that's great that you do all those. What about and I want there's a lot in there that I want to ask you about. But like what about in your life? Like what is it for the day that ahead of you? Is it work? Is it your family? Is it like a new mission that you're on? What do you and this is just to kind of give the audience an idea of like what's going on right now with you. Like what
Yeah,
is it that you're
I would say it's both my own healing and also then that um, being something that I share with others. And then, yes, I would say being present and available and conscious for my kids. It's not necessarily that it always works out perfectly, but it's about, I think it's about really modeling for them how I want them to be able to show up for themselves and show up for their life.
You know what? Let's go with that, Gwen.
Yeah.
Because most of my audience are parents, right? And I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. So what how can we become aware and what do you do to show that what you just explained, the presence and the um what do you do? There's specific things, or do you know what I mean, or do you just lead by example? How does it work?
No, I mean, every night, usually at dinner or before bed, we do what we call the rose, thorn, and bud. And so, I'm 15 years sober. And so part of, a 12-step program, which I kind of fought for a very long time, and then it became more a part of my life, is that they encourage that you do an inventory before you go to bed. And when I see a lot of the self-help, it's kind of the same thing. It's like really think about what you're grateful for. What are some of the things you want to let go of so that you don't bring that into your sleep state. And then you don't bring that into your morning state, because what we're thinking about is what we actually wake up thinking and feeling. So it's
Mhm.
really important to like cleanse that out, clear that out so that you can have a solid sleep state and then you can wake up in a solid state. So we usually do it at dinner or we do it at bed. And, we talk about what is our rose for the day, which is the things that we loved. And then we talk about our thorns for the day, which are the things that we don't like. And then for a while, we would just do the bud, which is what you're looking forward to. And then what I noticed was that there were things that had happened throughout the day that were kind of lingering. And I could see it in some of their consciousness, like they would wake up the next day and maybe a fight that they had gotten into with one another the day prior would just kind of still be lingering, or it would leak into, another argument between the siblings the following day. So I started to add in, what is your weed? And your weed is the thing that you didn't really like, but that, if you can talk about it and you can share what you might do differently next time, it kind of cleans out some of that energy, and it reinstates, like, what would I really want to do if I didn't like the way that I did something. So, last night, it's usually something related to one another or to, like, me, the parent. So, my son was like, I don't like that I yelled at you yesterday. I don't like that I yelled at you.
Right.
And, and then he says, and then I'll say, well, what could you do differently next time? Like, we all make mistakes. It's part of, being in relationships and learning to be understanding, but also stand up for ourselves and what boundaries are okay for us. And then he just said, I could take a deep breath, or I could walk away, or I could, use a different voice, try to find my words before I speak. And then, last night I realized that we didn't do any weeds. And then I woke up this morning, and that was something that I had written about in my journaling. I'd written what I was grateful for, what
Yeah.
I acknowledged myself for doing. And then when I noticed self-forgiveness, I noticed that there was just some lingering energy for me about how I had spoken to him when he was cleaning up his room and really getting very distracted. And same for my daughter. When it was the end of the night, it was after dinner, it was time for her to practice her violin, and she was distracted, which happens to all of us. And I was like, are you doing the violin? And then she yelled at me, and then I kind of yelled back. And when they woke up this morning, I had cleared that out. I had really gotten clear with myself that I didn't really like the way that I spoke. And it didn't make me feel good inside. And so I do self-forgiveness first, because we can't really move into forgiveness with others unless it's there residing inside of us first, unless, the energy is not going to be riding on clean energy. And so I did my own self-forgiveness. And then when they woke up, I said, hey guys, I realized there was a weed that I had from last night that I didn't share about. And I talked about it with my son, and I apologized. And I said, next time I'm going to get down on the ground and I'm going to, like, talk to you and see if I can help you organize the cleanup of your room a little bit better, versus just say, clean up your room. Because I realized that might be a really big job for you to do. And he said, yeah, it is. It's really hard for me to do that. And I said, okay, well, then I can help you, say, clean up the Legos, then clean up the crayons and the paper, and then clean up the slime. And then my daughter came in, and
Yeah.
she kind of, I did the same thing with her about the violin. And then she was able to say to me, I was yelling at you because I felt like you weren't listening. And I said, okay, I hear you. I want to make sure that I'm listening, and I appreciate you telling me that, and I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like it just creates, like, lightness, so that, because I think a lot of times these things happen in our daily life, and it's just like little weights, like little rocks that start to land in our energetic body, in our mind, in our consciousness, in our heart, in our energetic body, in our spirit. And we're not maybe really aware of how much of a toll they're taking, but those things start to add up, just like a bank account. If you're making good deposits into a bank account, it starts to add up. But when people are making deposits into their energetics and their heart, and their mind, that starts to take a very heavy toll. So I feel like cleaning those things out every day, whether it's through breath work, whether it's through these little tools with the kids, it really does help
Yeah. And
lighten our load.
yeah, I mean, there was so much gold in those statements there. And a lot of what you're saying um, requires effort,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple, I think, for us as humans just to, you know, push it aside, right? All these little things that add up, like you said. And I believe, just from what you were saying, what I'm taking away from this is your routines that you have, like your morning and being disciplined in that fashion, frees you and allows you to have the energy and have the awareness to parent like that,
Mhm.
or whatever you want to call it, right? And I think that's where it starts. I mean, tell me if you agree with me or not, but like, it's hard for an individual that isn't doing any self work, or, you know, a daily gratitude practice or meditation or exercise, or breath work or whatever it is, to just jump in and start doing everything that you explained and talked about, right?
Correct.
So there's probably like a process to it, would you say?
Yes, I definitely would. And I mean, when I have somebody come to me for coaching or even in the group coaching and they don't do anything, you know, I mean, I have to kind of assess the individual to see just intuitively what feels, and you know, and from a coaching perspective of what feels like it's going to be the most important thing. But that's something I always encourage up front is like, number one, get really clear on what your values are
Right.
first and foremost, because for some people this type of consciousness or living this way, you know, is a core value, and for some people it may not be, you know, exercising or being outside or cooking or relaxing on the sofa and reading might be a more of a core value. So I feel like it's really important for individuals to get super clear on what their core values are, because their core values are not going to be my core values. So even though as a coach, like my core values look a certain way, I always want to know what are your core values so that I can support you in spending time and doing them. And then as a coach, what I do is I encourage people, okay, you have a core value of honesty, or you have a core value of loyalty and friendships, or you have a core value of financial security. So then what I have them do is I just list out what are a couple of things that you could do, not that you have to do it. Because I think also too, when people feel pressure, a lot of people rebel. I remember one of my first coaches telling me, Steve Chandler, that humans innately rebel and push against being told what to do. Almost most humans.
It's like kids, right?
Totally, because there's a survival instinct. It's very reptilian. It's very primal. It's like, if you think about it, you know, a caveman, somebody gives them something and says, hey, this is going to help you. The caveman's like, I don't know if this is going to kill me or this is going to help me. So I'm going to say no to this and I'm going to find out what works for me. So we kind of still have some of these more primal things inside of us. Yes, we have a wonderful prefrontal cortex, but like we still operate a lot from our primal brain. And
Mm-hmm.
so I never tell people you have to do this. I always say, what are some examples of ways that you could practice honesty in your life every day, or that you could practice loyalty, or that you could practice financial security? You know, like, could you look at your bank accounts every single day and send them blessings and send them love and like say thank you? You know, just shift the relationship with it. Could you put a little penny in, or like a deposit, $1 every single day? Just what are some little things you could do? And then what I always encourage people to do is to start some self-care. Really start some self-care, whether it's doing just gratitude. Keep it simple, just do gratitude. Or, you know, if they have been kind of in the practice of maybe doing that, then maybe start to add in self-appreciation. Because I think that's one thing I see across the board with clients is that they we're so, again, I think it's that primal like reptilian of like what's not working so we can work better,
Right.
so that we can survive. So it's like we have a tendency to look at what we're not doing instead of looking at what it is that we are doing. So just really appreciating, I am proud of myself for taking a break at work today. I'm proud of myself for not drinking that coffee at 3 o'clock and instead going for a walk. I appreciate myself for pausing and not screaming at the kids when that's what I really impulsively felt like doing. You know, just really acknowledging the little things that we do. Because I think that can be an active meditation, especially for people who don't meditate, and then slowly start to bring in maybe like 3 minutes, you know, or 1 minute.
Yeah, you made me think of yesterday. Maybe I should have congratulated myself a little more, right? So yesterday, my son's 2.5, my daughter's 5.5. And I swear my daughter learned to hit from a neighbor, but we're not going to get into that. But she came at my son and he did something annoyed her, and I watched her wound up and smacked him right in the face. and I start running. That's like a trigger to me, like kids hitting each other. And I go over and I grab her on the arm and I go, Arya, come over here with Daddy. And I stop myself from like getting really angry and like grabbing her and dragging her over here and saying, I cannot believe you did that. And I stopped and I said, okay, come over
That's
here. Let's have a conversation and whatever. And I just continued from there. But I did it from a very calm space. And afterwards, I was like, all right, I'm glad I didn't react the way that I wanted to initially. I took a pause and chose a better route. And so anyway.
Yes. No, I mean, I think it's the small things like that, because
Yeah.
then when you acknowledge yourself and appreciate yourself, it creates that loop, in your brain, that reward mechanism of like, the next time you have that impulse, you're going to remember that other time, and your brain is also going to remember that. So
Yeah.
it's very powerful. It's simple but
Yeah.
powerful.
100%. And that's what made me think of that. And then you just said it, reinforced it, is it's from the previous incidents that I recognize went through step by step in my own brain of like, what happened? What could I have done better? How that lead to that better reaction in that moment. All that.
Yeah,
All that
and I
stuff.
love that. That's what I love about the weed, is it takes away some of the shame
Yeah, I see.
of like our impulsivity and our reactions, and you know our grittiness, of our humanity. And it removes the shame, it removes the guilt around it, when we can all just sit together and be like, yeah, you screamed and that didn't feel good. And when the other person can say, yeah, I did, I don't want to do that again next time.
That's a great addition, because it removes perfectionism, right? It removes that which is a killer for mind, body, everything, is that perfectionism of needing to be completely perfect at everything. And it allows us to be flawed humans that we are.
And I
And
think that translates into, like, let's say self-care, or the rituals or the meditation or the breath work. It's like, because that sometimes it's not going to feel great. Sometimes you're not going to focus on the meditation. Sometimes you're not going to like get the big hit from the breath work that you normally get.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
today my breath work was uneventful. It was very uneventful, but what I really leaned into was like, oh yeah, like what does that feel like to fully connect and like breathe fully into my body? And so maybe today it wasn't about having a big healing or a big aha moment.
hmm,
It was just really remembering to pause and to like fully breathe.
yeah. And so you have this routine that you do daily, right? And you've been doing it. Have you been doing it since you've been sober, or did you find it later on?
I
Just yesterday.
started actually before, I'm trying to think. I started before I got sober.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, nice.
but I would say the sobriety and like doing it in that context, it started to make sense. I think, like, I was in my master's in spiritual psychology, and there was a woman in that graduate program with me, and she would often say to me, why are you, because at that point I had not drank or done anything for a year, but just
Hmm.
pretty much on my own through will and determination and
It's
discipline.
beautiful.
And
It's great.
but you can only go so far with that, I think. And so she just said, why don't you surrender into the program? It really is beautiful. It's a lot of the same stuff that we're learning here in this spiritual psychology masters, but it's just framed differently. And then I didn't realize it, right? Because I was having that natural reaction to like push away and say, no, I'm okay, I know what I'm doing.
Sure.
um, and I feel good, right? I did genuinely feel pretty good, but it finally got to a point where I realized, there were a bunch of events that had happened, and I just realized, gosh, like if I'm so resistant to it, like what does that mean? Like, and that's become a theme of just like whatever we're really resisting, not only will it persist, but the reason, like what is the spiritual reason? What is the soul medicine behind that resistance? It's usually because it's an invitation, and there's some part of our ego that knows like it's not going to have as much power over us if we continue down that path. So I finally said, you know what, if it's so terrible, let me investigate and find out. And prior, to doing coaching and healing and breath work, I was in pharmaceutical and biotech research and consulting.
Yeah.
And so I thought, let me apply what I do in my work, right? Let's run an experiment. Like I'll fully engage in this, sober recovery program, and I'll do it for a year, and I'll collect all my data. And if my life is better, then I'll continue with it. And if it's not, then I will move away.
Yeah.
And so obviously it did become better. And I realized certain things that that woman had told me that we were learning, in our master's program, that probably my ego needed that official title versus just a simple spiritual solution. But it taught me so much, there were so many layers of learning to that.
That's, yeah,
Um,
that's a great, so man, like I have like 80 directions in my mind, because obviously you've said a lot of stuff that is a beautiful and amazing. So and I want to kind of relate it to myself and what I go through, but I have days, especially with my young kids, where unless I get up really early with them. So without getting into anything, what time do you get up in the morning?
Usually between 5 and 6.
Okay, that's my exact thing, between 5 and 6, right around 5:30 ish, and I have to, because my kids get up early, and that's my only time I can get in what I need to in the morning for myself. What about the days that you don't? That you just say, what, I'm not setting my alarm today, and if I wake up, I'm just going to sleep until they get up or whatever. Do you have those days, and how do you feel on those days?
I think you know the answer. Of course I have those days, but here, and I didn't notice, I didn't say I said so I
But
just
yeah,
caught myself saying that, and I don't usually feel as good, so it's kind of, yes, I'm not going to be perfect. And I think that's one thing that, like, myself and anyone who's listening, like, we can just let go of that. But what I love about that is that it's just a natural, like, organic feedback mechanism of, like, oh, this was kind of the day that you had, and you didn't fill your cup first. And is it more ideal to fill your cup first?
yeah. And then it starts with, and I bring this up because I go through it a lot, not a lot, but sometimes, like at nighttime, after the kids go to bed at 8, okay, I have 2 hours, because we like to go to bed by 10 with my wife. And sometimes though, we're like, oh, let's just, let's be a little, rebellious, or whatever you want to say, and watch a TV show till 10:30. Right. But then my mind starts going, oh God, oh my gosh, I'm not going to feel right in the morning. The same. I'm not going to be like, it's going to be harder to get up. And like, I go through all this like fight in my mind, and sometimes I give in, and sometimes I say, no, I think I want to just go to bed. But in the times that I do just say I want to go to bed, I feel way better in the morning. But I also enjoy that extra half hour at night to, like, have my wife's head on my chest and rub her hair while we're watching TV. So it's just this weird game that you play back and forth in your mind when you're in this zone that we're in, right?
It is. And I think, like, you just, like, extrapolate that, and you can apply it to anything. Like, oh, do I buy these new pair of sunglasses just because I kind of want to, and the money is there? Or do I want to not buy them and just be, content with the ones I have, and have that extra money, just to
Yeah.
put into my retirement? Or, same thing with food. It's like, if I know something doesn't make me feel good, like, what is the risk and the the benefit ratio? And sometimes, and I was talking with a friend, her name's Alyssa Goodman. She's like a health and wellness influencer on social media. And I said, do you ever eat bad food? Like, do
Right.
you ever? And she said, sometimes, very, very rarely now.
Wow.
Very rarely, but sometimes I do. And when I do, I'm reminded of why I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that can apply to so many things. Like, if I watch TV, that doesn't make me feel good, because that we take that energy on. Or if I watch a movie, or if I'm listening to music, or I think the more that people do like this work, and clear out things that are not aligned with who they are, and come more into alignment with who they are, it's almost like the road gets a lot narrower, like you said. And your rebellion now is, do I stay up until 11? And I'm the same way, I'm the same way. It's usually
Yeah.
when there's a full moon, I'm very affected by the full moon. So I know that when I am in that energy, I've learned to appreciate it and to kind of channel it. And I know the next day, I think to what you were just sharing, I know the next day I'm probably going to need to block off some time so that I can either
Yes.
lay down on the sofa, because if you're horizontal, your body is getting the rest that it needs. So even if I have to keep working, as long as my body is
Ah,
horizontal and I just have the computer doing that, or I'm doing something on my phone,
ah,
ideally, if I could put the phone or the computer away, that would be even better, but
that's
we can also set things up to support us, I think.
yeah, that's really good. See, if I'll turn this around real quick. So I decided recently to start working out of my guest room. So there's a bed I can just go on it horizontal after this and get my
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
That's
even
cool.
sometimes for like 5, 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Gwen, let's take a shift here. All right.
Yeah.
Because, this is interesting. So I, I'm a meditation teacher. I meditate every morning, most afternoons. And the last three mornings, I
Hmm.
did breathwork meditation. And it's the first time ever that I did it for more than one day in a row, or recently actually. And it had nothing to do with the anticipation of coming up and talking to you, because honestly, I didn't open up your like website and start, looking for questions and how I want to talk to you until this morning.
Right.
So, and then I realized, whoa, breathwork, I've been doing this. What is like coincidence? I don't know. Universe speaking, I have no idea. But it was it's such a different experience. I'll tell you, for people listening, I want to share with like a couple things that I noticed compared to meditation,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
And what type of breath work were you doing? Just
So,
curious.
so it was, it started off like basically it was 4 counts in,
Hmm.
hold for 4, out for 8, and then 5, hold for 5, out, and then hold for as long as you can, out. So it was just, I don't know what you would call that,
Okay.
but there was, the exhale was always longer.
Right.
And then we lengthened the breath all the way up to like 45 seconds total, like
Cool.
circle breath, which was pretty cool to do. And I
Mhm.
felt tingling in my body from
Mhm.
it. However I was oxygenating myself, I had tingling for sure. And one thing else I noticed is it was like way easier to control my thoughts. What I mean by that is during meditation, I mean, I'm in and out of thought a lot, some
Mhm.
days more than others. And during this breath, and maybe because it was guided the entire time, I don't know, but it was just a whole different type of concentration and awareness, right?
Mhm.
So talking to you, what first, can you explain what these moon circles are? You mentioned full moon, and then moon breath, right? I think is how you say the name. What is this? I've never heard of it.
Yes. So what I love about breath work is that it's similar to meditation, similar to yoga. There are all different types. So that's why I was curious to hear when you said breath work, like what type of breath work? Because again, it's like, is somebody doing, mantra meditation? Are they sitting quietly? Are they doing a walking meditation? Are they, what
Right.
guided? Does it have an intention behind it? Is it breathing meditation? All kinds of
Yeah.
meditation. So breath work I find is very similar. There's all types of
Ah,
breath work, and some of them fall more into, like, let's say, a category of like tools, and techniques that you can use with your breath through working it. And then what I find is there's other breath work that can be more of like a healing modality. So it's like you go into it more with an intention to like heal something, to have clarity around something, where you start to engage with your breath as your own healer inside of you. So I do both. I love breath work, techniques like,
mhm.
the one you did. There's also 4-7-8, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you exhale for 8. It's like you're teaching the body how to take less in and create more space between stimulus and response, and then let more out of the body since we hold so much. Then there's like box breath, which is really great for focus. There's coherent breathing. There's, all different types of breath. And then,
Infinity breath was one that comes to mind. Is that
yeah,
one?
yeah,
Infinity.
there's so many. And I think a lot
Right.
of individuals have taken, particular breathing mechanisms and kind of like branded it, and made it their own,
Just like meditation, everybody.
which is fine.
Yeah.
And these breathwork healings, what I'd say is, there's rebirthing, there's holotropic, there's this other form that I studied, which is from David Elliott. And what their intention again is, it's more of what I would say, it has more of like a sacred kind of, not ritual, but more of like a ceremony. It's more like, to me, it's very sacred. Like you go into it, like I said, with the intention to really heal something that's inside. So,
What would that look like? Like,
so
what does that process look like when you close your eyes?
like it would be, so it's a 3-part breath, and it's, you breathe into the belly, you breathe into the chest, and then you exhale. So it's all through the mouth. So mouth breathing starts to bring you more into your body and into your heart. Whereas a lot of the nostril breathing keeps you kind of in your head, or it brings clarity to the head. So it's not necessarily that nostril breathing isn't healing. It's just this mouth breathing is going to bring you it's going to take you out of your head and move you into the body. So a lot of times individuals have an experience of not thinking, and they're purely just like in an energetic state. So a lot of people say that it feels very similar to maybe being like in a psychedelic ceremony, or being in a plant medicine ceremony, or maybe going into like a healing session, let's say with like an energy healer or a shaman, or a medicine person, or maybe like Akashic records that has like energy movement in it, or maybe even Reiki. Some people are really efficient with Reiki. So it has more of a, I would say, like a medicinal, but not necessarily medicine. It just has more of like a spiritual, energetic healing. And so what I started to do was I was doing breath work, and I was offering groups and privates. And then for many years, I had been doing just moon circles with my female friends. And so the reason why I started doing that was because I noticed after I had kids, I was still very much in my masculine. I was still, for a long time, I was a single mom. And so I was still like pushing and driving and like really working. And I started to notice that I was very disconnected from my feminine essence. And so I started doing these moon circles to really connect with the lunar cycle, to connect with my own menstrual cycle, to connect with like the different stages of womanhood that we move through every week of the month. And then I thought, why not bring them together? So we would do different rituals and different practices, and whether it's intention setting or releasing or calling things in, around the lunar cycle, because there's so much power in the lunar cycle. I mean, if like you look at Farmer's Almanac, like everything is based on the lunar cycle. If you look at astrology, everything, relates to the different planets and to the sun and to the moon. So there's so much that happens for us related to these lunar cycles. I mean, I always tell people, even when I started inviting men to the circles, so now I have, so we do breath work and the moon circle in one. And I have women just coming to the new moon circle, which is when we can't see the moon. And then I invite men and women into the full moon circle when we can fully see the moon, mostly because the full moon has a lot of masculine energy to it. It's a very outward energy. If you think about, you can see the moon, it's full, it's bright, just like the masculine, not only just energetically, is usually about like, going out. Whereas the feminine energy within each of us, like we each have feminine and masculine. So it's like the feminine, if you think about the organs, are like in, whereas the masculine is out. And the feminine is really about a time, where it's a little bit deeper, it's a little bit darker, it's about going within, it's about reflecting. And so we do that in the new moon circle, and then combine not only like the astrology, the lunar energy, but then like bringing the breath work into it. So using whatever theme is happening in that lunar moon. So let's say the last one that just passed was a full moon, in Aries. So the moon shows us a lot of what's going on inside of us, whereas the sun shows us what's happening outside. So the moon circles are all really about going in. They're going inside to really look at what's happening in your internal landscape. It's not necessarily as much about what can I do out here? What actions can I take? How can I make these things happen? It's really like what's moving through me. And then when there's a different sign moving through the full moon, so in Aries, Aries is a lot of fire, has a lot of passion, it has a lot of, push. And if you look at the shadow of it, it can have a lot of aggression. It can have a lot of irritation and annoyance. So it's just starting to look at these different energies inside of us. And then when we breathe, we really breathe into whatever the theme is for that moon, for that month.
Oh. Well, and is it a certain time of the day? Do you wait until the moon's out to go through this process?
I mean, well, interestingly enough, the moon comes at different times. So sometimes like there can be a full moon at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Just based on, where the lunar cycle is. But I normally do them from 5 to 7 at night, mostly just because it works out well with kids and schedules and everything.
Totally. That's fair. That's totally fair. That's neat.
This particular breath work, it opens, it can open up a lot of energy that may be kind of stuck or held in the body that's really not aligned with who we are. And using your breath as the momentum, as like the cleansing agent to like clear that out, so that when you're done, you're more connected to your life force. You're more connected to your heart, to your spirit that's inside of you. And then what I notice with a lot of people is like that starts to become the thread that pulls them in their life versus them like pushing and trying to make things happen. Mm-hmm. It's just more things start to naturally happen because you're more in alignment with like your inherent energy and your inherent design and heart.
Yeah, I can completely see how breathwork I love that word, how you said unstuck, like whatever's stuck inside of you, it kind of loosens it, lets it go, releases it through breathwork. And that's that's very powerful, including the moon and all that.
What I love about breath work is that, unlike, let's say, Akashic records, where if you're not attuned to it, like you're not able to open up your records, right? Or if people are listening and they're like, what is that? Or let's say even Reiki, like if you're not attuned, quote unquote, to Reiki, like you have to go to somebody else. Or if you want to do like a plant medicine ceremony, you have to go to somebody else.
Yeah.
But what I love about breath work is that initially it can be helpful, just like with meditation or anything new that we're learning, to have somebody guide us or hold the space.
Yeah.
What I find is that like when you're breathing, that's your breath, like that's your energy, that's your life force moving through you and communicating with you and showing you what's trapped, what's blocked. So that, and then you get to use your own breath to clear it out. Like it's not like you're reliant on another person or something outside of you.
Yeah.
Your breath is your life.
Yeah, so can you hold your breath for like 8 minutes straight, no problem, or what? I had to throw something in there like that.
Probably. I don't know about 8 minutes, but I can hold it pretty long. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Wim Hof? I'm sure you're familiar with Wim Hof, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever done any breath work with him or?
I have done Wim Hof. Yes.
Okay.
I and I think that's the thing too about meditation and yoga is everybody will find their own type that really sits well with their energy.
Yeah. I have like, as you say this, like the type of breath work where it's really intense, right? Because you like the Wim, in my opinion, would be like a Wim Hof type of person, right? Where it's like a lot of really like going in it. And then what you're describing sounds a lot more, relaxed breath work, I guess you could say.
It's not.
Okay, all right.
I think inherently, if you think about breath work,
yeah,
like that's why some more of the tools I think are more like breath relax versus breath work it's like work. I mean, it's not work, but you are actively working with your breath.
Right.
Not sitting there like breathing in and out. Like I have this one client who I think she's about 75. And she was experiencing a lot of anxiety, and it was very out of character for her. So her family, brought her, and, she does a lot of like meditation and a lot of yoga and a lot of chanting. And when we started to do it, she's like, I'm tired. Like, this feels like work. And I said, yeah, it actually is going to feel like work, because this is not time to relax. This is time to actively work through the things that are trapped in your body, that are taking up energetic space in your energetic body. So for her, it was anxiety, and it was like landing in her chest, and it was feeling like there was like a Mack truck, sitting on her chest.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not aligned with who you are. Like, that is something that has either found its way into your body, or it's something in the mind that's finding its way into the body. There's something that's not really who you are, that's in there, and it's giving you feedback. It's saying, hey, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
Come and look at me. I'm here, right? And so I think that's the thing. It's like a lot of our society is like, we don't want to look, or like you were saying in the very beginning, it's like we kind of get distracted with like, oh, I'm busy with life, versus saying, no, actually, like, what was that moment where you screamed or you didn't scream? Like, let's like really dial it down into the small minutia of our life, because so much of it just gets like put to the side, and then people wonder why they're getting sick, or they're having anxiety, or they're feeling blues or depression.
Right.
And so now when we're sitting with that, it's like I work when I do one-on-one, I'm actually speaking to that part, and I'm like giving it its own opportunity to speak back. Because like any other, whether it's a negative thought form that's found its way into her chest, whether it's energy, whether it's genetics, whether it's hormones, whether it's something that she's moving through with like nearing the end of her life, right? It's like, we want to look at it. It's similar. I always say to people when they get to that point in the breath work where they're like, no, this is too uncomfortable. I don't want to keep doing this. I
Right.
don't want to keep going. And I say, that is usually the place in your life where you put it over to the side. This is, you're bumping up against that point where you normally stop, you numb out, you distract, you get busy, or you fall into the old pattern or the old sabotage, right? And that's the part that we want to actually keep moving through. And we want to clarify like what's there. And I always tell people, it's like a stomach bug, right? You get a stomach virus, and you get very clear feedback that there's something in your body that's not supposed to be in your body. And it's going to need to come out. In one way or another, it's going to find its way out, because your body is saying, I want this thing out. This is not aligned, and this is not healthy for our system. I'm going to either fever it out, I'm going to vomit it out, I'm going to get it out another way, through the other way.
Poop it out.
And so what I say is like, the breath work kind of does the same thing. It will very clearly show what is in the body that is not aligned with your spirit, your heart, your consciousness, and the breath can be the way to clear it out.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a space that's kind of scary to go into sometimes too, but I mean, the release is probably so euphoric. It's beautiful. Two things, technique. What is like something throughout the day, or a quick 1 minute in the morning, like breathwork technique that we can use to cultivate this, or have it,
Yeah. I mean, I do have a YouTube video that has like a 7-minute to the type of work that I'm talking about. I also have some audio meditations that for this breath work. But what I would even say is like through the day, I mean, two of my favorite ones are, if you're noticing that you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, like relaxing your body, like bringing your body out of that fight or flight. By doing the 4-7-8 breath is really great. And you can just do it for like 3 rounds, 30 seconds. Just breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And then if somebody is noticing like that they have a tendency, like what I've learned through human design is there are some people that like when they wake up in the morning, they just like, because of their design and their aura, they just do kind of wake up in a funky mood, you know,
Sure.
or they're not one that's like as amped up to just get out of bed and like start the day. Like that can be just part of a design, you know, of kind of just the inherent of who you are, but you don't have to live with that, you know. So if you have trouble getting yourself focused, it's like you could do breath work. The box breath is what the Navy SEALs do, and it's amazing for keeping your body calm but allowing the mind to really get focused. And that's just breathing in for 4, holding for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. So you just kind of go 4, 4, 4, 4 in a box.
Yeah.
And just do that again for a couple of rounds. And then, you know, if you don't even remember any of that and that makes no sense to you and you're listening, you know, just breathe in. Like breathe in for 5 and then exhale for 5. And just do it. You know, I have a lot of like CEO, like chairman of pharmaceutical companies that are, you know, they are like, I don't have time for that. And I'm like, do you pee during the day? Yes, I do. Okay, well, when you're going to the bathroom, just practice your breath. Like really make it easy for yourself. You do not have to add another thing to your list to do in order to be healthy or to be conscious. Truly do it, or just keep it simple and do it when you brush your teeth. Hopefully you brush your teeth twice a day. So do it in the morning when you're brushing your teeth and do it, you know, at night. Like keep it simple.
I love it. You're finding spots where people can't make an excuse to do a little bit of breath work.
Totally.
It's perfect. When you're on hold on the phone, you're calling somebody, you know, the few rings that you're on hold for, that kind of stuff.
You know, people with small children, I say when your kids start whining, just breathe.
Oh, great opportunity to breathe.
Right? And you'll probably have a lot of opportunities to do that.
Oh my gosh.
But
Yeah.
too, but what happens when you do that is they start to feel like, let's say for instance, we are each connected to one another through our limbic system and through our energy, right? Like they're going to feel into the pace of your breath.
Yeah. Well, you know, well, if you think about it, Gwen, you like when you get in a situation and it's awkward, you can feel that awkward energy from people. You can see it. Like you can be away, you can be like in a different conversation, look over and see it and feel, you know, and so not just on body language, but there is an energy, right? So you definitely like the kids can sense that calmness energy. I mean, our eyes can, I was actually just reading about this, how our eyes, the only reason the world is the way it is because of what we can see, right? There's other energies, there's vibrations, there's like our ears can only hear so much. Like ants walking on the ground, they make noise. Our ears just can't get to that decibel.
Right.
So,
and what I would say, Justin, through the breath work, what I find for this particular type of breathing, what happens for a lot of people is they start to open up, if you want to call it intuitive, psychic, like gifts. You start to open up your clairsentience, which is in your body, that you can feel things that are not happening. You can open up your clairaudience, which is like you can start to hear things that are not, you know, being said, but you can actually start to hear them, or you can start to hear like animals in a different way. Some people, you know, they open up their clairvoyance, which is where you can start to see certain things, whether through dreams and life. And, you know, and then there's other like claircognizance is when you actually just have a knowing. It's not like something you have to think about. It's just all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know, I don't know. What's an example? I don't know. Somebody just knows something, you know, and then somebody says something to them and they're like, oh yeah, they say what they know. And they're like, how did you know that? And then there's other people that have like a clair olfactory, which is where you can smell through things. Like you can smell BS, you can smell lies, you can smell just when something's off. And sometimes people can really open up their gifts where they can start to smell like different disease. Like cancer has a very specific smell to it. Like autoimmune has another type of smell to it. And you can really, if you're attuned to that, you can smell if there's something in the body.
Is there science behind like breath work being able to open those senses up?
I don't think so yet.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
And I know some people would say, you know, in the land of like the multidimensional and spirit, like I'm not sure if like science is ever going to have enough capacity to be able to like conceptualize it.
Yeah, I agree.
Who knows though. But yeah, I mean, there's some amazing people doing amazing work. Andrew Huberman is somebody, I met him through Mind Body Green, and he does a lot of really incredible work with
And well, Gwen,
technology.
let me ask you this, because this is a good, I think this is a good spot to ask this, because, and I just thought of it. I've had a lot of people on this podcast, and they were like, breathing healed me, meditation healed this, yoga healed this. Actually, someone recently said the breath work from yoga healed her asthma. Like
Oh
she used to
yeah,
go to the hospital all the time for it, and she had got a one-on-one coach. They worked together for years, and it's gone. Like her asthma is gone.
I've seen
And
it happen.
well, what I want to ask you is, you've seen it happen too, and then I'll go and tell this story to somebody, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, but what else were they doing? Oh no, she just grew out of it." Oh, and it's like, no, I keep hearing these things over and over and over based on them starting this practice or this thing. Like, when is it going to be where, like, you don't need a scientific proof, and it's like, okay, sometimes this does help you manage it. Sometimes it does help get rid of most of it. Like,
Yeah, I think it's probably like the collective consciousness is just still energetically like in the ego, and looking for proof versus moving into the unknown and finding proof in the unknown, in like whatever word you want to call it, source, energy, spirit. And yeah, when a lot of times when people come to me and they have that, that skepticism about it, I always say it's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to be doubtful. It's okay to question things, because that actually, like, there's shadow and light to everything. That can be a healthy thing. However, if it's closing you off from a possibility, then it's not healthy, and maybe just bring in more willingness, right? And here's the other thing that I have learned through studying human design. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it is incredible. And when you look at, there's a lot of different philosophies that come together to make up the human design. And essentially you get like a body chart of somebody with 9 energy centers versus what's traditionally known as like the 7 chakras. Human design has 9. I don't need to get into the reason why, but there are. And again, this is just another philosophy. Somebody doesn't have to buy into it or believe it. But what I've learned from it is that it brings in a lot of astrology, and it has different energy centers. And it points out when we have certain energy centers either defined or not defined, when we have these certain gates and channels open, there are things like this that are shown in these charts. So for instance, somebody who has that channel or who has that gate or who has that center defined may not be open to things like breath work actually working, or acupuncture actually moving through their body, because their energy at that point of the body is just, it's set, it's defined. It's not going to be open to like being moved by let's say energy. And so it's so fascinating. And the more that I look at like just people I know, my clients, and I just see where certain things are in their chart, I can so clearly see why acupuncture works for one of my clients, and the other one is like, nothing, get nothing from it.
interesting.
And so I don't have to, as a coach, it's healing for me to look at the person that's saying, nah, doesn't work for me. Yoga doesn't work for me either. Meditation doesn't work for me either, but breath
Right.
work sometimes works, or Reiki sometimes,
Yeah.
I can say, I don't have to say to them, you're not being open, you're being stubborn, or
Mm,
you're being resistant. I can actually look and see like, oh, they don't really have that channel or that center open to really receive information that way. So let's look at what they do have and like work with what they do have as part of their design.
is there
So
a book on this?
yes, you could do, you can go onto, just the internet and type in, get my free chart. And then there's plenty of websites and podcasts. But the book I would really recommend is Understanding Human Design by, I believe her name is Karen Curry. And it is amazing as a parent to be able to get the chart for your kids,
Ah,
to really support your kids based on what their inherent energy and their design is versus what our society puts on us. I think that's also something when you were just sharing about people that are like, that doesn't work. What
yeah.
else are they doing? I think sometimes when I listen to those people too, I hear like fear, fear,
Yeah.
like surrendering over beliefs and surrendering over control and like
Yeah.
stepping into the unknown.
Right. Yeah. And then
And
those
I
blockages
understand
that
that.
you mentioned, the
Yeah, and I
blockage.
understand that too,
So,
because
yeah.
like let's say for instance, I didn't want to do like a program of recovery for several years,
Yeah.
right? I was blocked against that. I
Yeah.
was resistant to it. And so when people show up that way, I don't try to force them to change. I also don't make them wrong. I just kind of bring love to it.
Yeah.
And that like, and the prayer that like, if that's supposed to change for them and for their highest good, like allow source and spirit or whatever you believe in to support them with that, so
Yeah.
that they can surrender if they're meant to in divine time that's for their highest good and the highest good of all concerned.
I love that. You were really, really good. If there's good and bad in this world, you are really good, if that exists. I mean, I want to have you on for like 8 hours and just keep going. And then you can send me my bill and I'll Amex it to you. But uh,
Well,
you,
maybe you and your wife can come to one of the full moon circles if you ever get out of this COVID experience. It can hire a babysitter.
seriously, seriously. Yeah, that was just like that right there reminded me of, I'm looking right now, there's this book by Frederick Dodson. It was called Energy Levels of Energy. So
Mm,
it's like that way you can see that, okay, this person's on this level of energy, that's why they're not open to this or getting to this, that like they have a lot of steps to go before they can, or whatever,
yeah. And that reminds me of another really great book. I don't know if you've ever heard by David Hawkins. It's called Power versus Force.
I
And
have it sitting on my desk for a year now.
it's a dense
So,
book to
yeah.
get through. I don't blame you.
But
It's
keep
not
going.
a, just
Sorry.
it's not just an easy read to move through.
No, no. Keep
But
going though.
it's really great. And he studied, these guys like an MD and a PhD. So I love that book for people that are very practical, maybe a little bit more conservative, maybe not as open, because it's written by somebody I feel like with degrees so that they can take it in maybe a little bit easier. Just speaks to like that ego part that needs to see the validation first. And he
Yeah.
did do a lot of research, and what he found was that all of our emotions and all of our energy is on a continuum. And he relates certain people through history to the energetic continuum. So I find that really powerful way to also, if somebody's skeptical but there's a little crack of opening,
Yeah.
I love that book.
Okay.
And I
Cool.
wrote down the book suggestion that you gave to me. I'm going to look into that too.
Yeah, it's neat. It's really neat, actually. And then, I just to relate to what you said earlier, again for the listeners, you know, it was really, I want to repeat it because it was really powerful, because it happened to me so much. 3 years ago, I would have laughed at people that meditated. You know, like I would have like that. I would. It's that blockage of like, that is so stupid. Like, who does that? Hippies, long beard. You know, like I just blocked it completely. I never even knew anything about it. Um, and obviously now it's different. So I can relate. Now what happens is, though, what happened to me is a new type of ego came out, right? Where it's like, ooh, now I know. Now this like meditation thing when I first started, right, was, oh, it's so powerful. How can nobody do this? What? You don't do it? And then I started becoming that person
Right.
that did that. And what you just said is really getting out of your head, getting into your heart, meet the person in that present moment and just be, right? There's no agenda. There's no needing to force your, and I just wanted to reiterate that because that was really powerful. And that I needed to learn that. It took me a while to actually learn that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I always just try to look at my own journey as to like, to bring myself back into compassion and into my heart. Because like you said, like once you're doing a practice, it can seem so obvious, right? But it's like really to come back to like where I was when, let's say I was very high functioning, but I was drinking a lot of alcohol and it was not healthy. It wasn't really healthy for my physiology. It wasn't healthy for my heart. It wasn't healthy for my spirit. I was, but again, I was very high functioning. So nothing was falling apart in my life.
Interesting.
But, and I can remember, thinking, gosh, I don't think this is really great for me. But then I would go back to just autopilot, and then every once in a while somebody would say to me like, hey, I don't know if this is such a great thing. It's a little bit more excessive than other people. And I, resisted it. And I think for all those years I resisted, and the people who loved me, that saw me, like what that must have felt like for them, to just watch somebody that they love doing something that they knew was not in alignment with who the person was. And so, yeah, it's like coming into that place of compassion of like, oh, and looking at somebody else of, I get it. It seems strange. It is a little strange, especially if it's new, and this might be a really cool article to read or a TED Talk to watch, but no pressure. And I think that's one of the things I learned from the masters in spiritual psychology is they would always say, everybody has everything that they have, the wisdom inside of them. It's just and just trust, trust that like they are moving through what they're supposed to move through. And if it's in their soul's contract to move into sobriety and not be high functioning alcoholic anymore, like they will, and trust, like they will get to that. And so I just always do that now. Like if I can, clairvoyant or clairsentient see something about somebody, I keep focusing on that truth that I see, but also meeting them right where they are. And also what I learned in that master's program was that really like healing is loving the places inside that are hurt. And so when like I can just bring love to somebody, whether they're in a breathwork session and they're breathing through trauma or they're breathing through anxiety, it's just like continually to bring like non-judgment and neutrality and love to it. Because the more that you do, David Hawkins talks about that too in that book, is like love is like such a high energy. If there's something that's out of alignment, it can't really survive there. So it either has to like dismantle and dissipate, or it has to go somewhere else.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted to keep listening to you talk. I just keep going and going. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm actually excited for you to Google your human design.
Yeah, me too. I did recently had somebody Enneagram. Have you heard of the Enneagram? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I dove into that a little bit. My wife's really into it, and that was super interesting. Like it
That's
was
really powerful too, for helping you see your shadow and your gifts.
knowing
Yeah.
what you need to work, like it literally tells you like this is who you are and this is what you need to work on and this is what is strong about you. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's start working. Here we go.
Totally. And I would say human design, I bring both of those into the group coaching that I do, because I feel like it's a very tangible way to look at our shadow. It's not like we have to like start looking at all of our own stuff. It's like you see that report on the paper of like Enneagram 6 or whatever,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, okay.
Are you
Yeah.
a 6? You're a 7.
I'm a 3.
You're not supposed to type people. I'm just throwing numbers out there. You're a 3. Okay. I'm a 7. Cool. Well, I want to respect your time, Gwen. I want to honor it. Thank you so much. I'm going to release this one before my queue of 5 other ones I have, because I want people to hear this. So truly, like, whatever you're doing for people, the ripple effect you're creating, like, is the equivalent of 1 million people. So keep it up. I really appreciate it so much.
Too, and like you were saying, like some of the little pieces that I shared about, if any of those little pieces like are standing out for individuals, I do have a couple of workshops. They're like $11 each, and little workbooks that go with them, so that if you're struggling with like letting go of control or fear or like negative self-talk, and a couple of other ones, there really is like a process that you can kind of take yourself through that works for most energies. And it's really like we talked about, whether it's through breath or through processing, like really coming into that part and learning how to talk to those parts. Just like we talked about in the beginning of learning how to talk with our kids, honestly and vulnerably, it creates so much healing, whether it's with ourselves or with our kids.
Yeah. And it's on Gwen Dittmar.
Yep.
GwenDittmar.com. As I said in the intro, you guys could get all of that. That's awesome. So, I guess, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us, or, do you have a book?
I don't have a book, but
you need a book. You need to get off this.
I am ready. Yeah. So I have the podcast. I do have a podcast. It's called The Beautiful Grit, and I do coaching and healing sessions. So if somebody shows up like with anxiety or with something, I coach them through it. And I try to keep it to like 20, 30 minutes so people can start to see that like working through even like really big challenges, we can move through them. We really can. We don't have to sit in it, and it really is about bringing love to those places inside that are hurting.
Yeah, if I could go back, I had a really, really bad situation. I've only had one panic attack my whole life. It was a very mild panic attack. I'm not the type of person to get one, but if I could go back and work with someone like you on it immediately, rather than trying to figure it out myself and deal with it myself, I would have way rather gone that route. So anybody listening, like, highly recommend that for sure.
Yeah, I was the same way, probably with like the high functioning drinking. And what I learned from that though now is like, I am so willing, I'm so like you just said, what I learned from it was be open, be willing. There's plenty of people out there that have gifts to share with things we're struggling with. And so just get support so you don't have to go through it alone. It's like, we're here on this earth together.
Yes.
For a reason.
100%.
Thank 100%. You so much. It was so fun to meet you and to talk with you.
Thank you. I'll message you with all the info and stuff. Thank you so much, Gwen.